the 2022 automated election system was rigged. An illustrated presentation using data from COMELEC as solid evidences. It all started here. This is the partial and unofficial results from the COMELEC transparency server from 8:02 p.m. of May 9 to 3:18 p.m. of May 13 for the major presidential and vice presidential candidates. Shown in the tables, in the colored columns, are the vote ratios of candidates for president using the votes of BBM as the common denominator, and the vote ratios of candidates for vice president using the votes of Sara as the common denominator. It can immediately be noticed that there is an uncanny and consistent pattern of percentage vote ratio between the votes of Lenny divided by the votes of BBM all throughout the counting done in the COMELEC transparency server. This is true also for the other candidates. This was explained by COMELEC and the poll watchdog PPCRV as the consequence of the statistical law of large numbers. The results of the 2022 election showed many incredible results. First, we have a first-hour peak count of more than 20 million votes at 8:02 p.m., just an hour after voting closed. And we see here statistically highly improbable constant vote ratio for all candidates for president and vice president. And we have the highest number of votes ever gotten by a presidential candidate, with the vice president getting higher than the president and both president and vice president getting higher than the senator top-notcher, a first in our election history. Now we know that the large numbers shown to the public by COMELEC transparency server at the first hour of counting after voting closed at 7 p.m. of May 9, 2022 were fabricated. How? Take a look at this. We question the unbelievably record high of 39,512 VCM transmission made in the first hour, and it became more questionable when compared to the second hour, where there was a drop of almost half, 25,784, where compared to the first hour, 39,512, when logically more VCM should be ready to transmit in the second hour due to administrative matters that have to be done before any transmission can be made. We now know that the first hour VCM transmissions were padded by a secret and illegal device, later identified as a telco exchange, with a private IP address 192.168.0.2. Of the 39,512 VCM transmission received by the transparent server in the first hour, at least 20,300 election returns, or 51%, came from IP address 192.168.0.2. These selected VCMs were pre-programmed to send fabricated ERs for the telco server sent their ERs even before the VCM itself can transmit them, as will be shown later. Without this telco exchange, the large number of the first hour will not materialize if left to the regular transmission of the telco networks. In fact, COMELEC cannot show the telco's transmission logs because it will become known that almost no VCM transmission passed through the telco's network between 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. of May 9, 2022. The main objective of the deception is to have a large number of first-hour transmission, not only to justify the use of the law of large numbers, but to shock and awe the public in order for them to accept the final election results. This is the VCM transmission flow shown in the Senate hearing last September 14, 2023. It will be shown that this did not comply with 1. The terms of the contract between COMELEC and SMARTMAGIC. Second, the actual VCM transmission on the 2022 election. And third, provisions of the Omnibus Election Law. It was not only kept secret, but illegal. This is the legal transmission flow, or the end-to-end transmission path that COMELEC showed the public and stakeholders on March of 2022, a few weeks before election. You'll notice here that all VCM, vote counting machine nationwide, transmit their election results to 3 servers. First is the central server, second is the transparency server, and third is the municipal server. Notice that there are no devices in between the VCM and the servers. In the 2022 transmission flow VCM that COMELEC showed Senate during their budget hearing, what they have here are all the 107,000 VCM transmit to only a single recipient, which they call the telco exchange. And it is this telco exchange that now sends the election results to the central server, to the transparent server, and to the municipal server. We call this the man-in-the-middle device because all transmission are intercepted by this device. And it is the one that also sends out the data from all of these VCM. And that is the classic definition of a man in the middle. And it is, of course, illegal. No? This telco exchange never appeared in the legal transmission flow. It only came up during the September 14, 2023 Senate hearing on the budget for COMELEC. And worse, you can see here that after the VCM sent its ERs to the telco exchange, it is the telco exchange that sends the ER to the municipal server or the canvassing center servers, and the municipal servers send back their certificate of canvas to the telco exchange. And again, it is the telco exchange that sends the COC or the certificate of canvas to the next level, which is the provincial and the district. And these servers send back their certificate of canvas to the telco exchange. And the telco exchange sends it to the national server. And national server back to the telco exchange and to the central server. So there is a back and forth transmission between all the levels of the CCS servers to the telco exchange router, which is against the law because the law specifies that the official results, the official count of the election should be ladderized, no? From the lowest level, which are the precinct, to the municipal, to the provincial, to the national. Here you do not see it. And this telco exchange is a potential single point of failure. No? If this device, something happens to this device, the whole network will crash. And all reputable network designers avoid a single point of failure. And in the security aspect, this is also a single point or a man-in-the-middle device that could easily rig the 2022 election. Republic Act number 9369, amending Republic Act 8436, mandates that the official result of the election must be done in a ladderized manner, meaning that all the election returns from the precinct level must go directly to the municipal level and then up to the provincial level and regional level, in this case for the arm, to the topmost national level. Section 19 and Section 20 requires that this must be done, which was also the case when our election was being done manually. In the Senate budget hearing of COMELEC last September 14, 2023, Senator Coco Pimentel told Chairman George Garcia that the challenge for COMELEC was to prove that the 2022 election was legally implemented. The answer of Garcia went off on a tangent by saying that the law does not prohibit the use of a single IP address. But the cause of that single IP address, which is the telco exchange, is what was illegal, as alleged by then election lawyer George Garcia and Nelson Celis, when both were questioning COMELEC regarding the Meet Me Room after the May 13, 2019 election. Nelson Celis, spokesperson of the awaited election system Watts, claimed that the Meet Me rooms allegedly host undeclared servers and intercept data from the vote counting machines to the Commission of Election. These undeclared servers, which Commissioner Celis mentioned on the 2019 election, is now what they call as the telco server. He said that such Meet Me rooms are against the Omnibus Election Code. In the Omnibus Election Code, sa manual elections natin, the ballot box goes directly to the Municipal Board of Canvassing. Here, may intervention. Iyong queuing server is not following the Omnibus Election Law. Even if there's a plausible explanation that's still irregular because it doesn't follow the law, the VCM should be directly sending election returns to the Municipal Board of Canvassers. Then, Celis added. And for his part, election lawyer George Garcia said in 2019, COMELEC should explain further the use of Meet Me room since it could cast doubt about the transparency of the election. In that Senate hearing of 2023, Chairman George Garcia said that it was he who coined the term Meet Me room, and said that the exact terminology of that Meet Me room or queue server is the telco exchange. And now that is strange because a similar device was used on May 19, 2019 by both Garcia and Celis as illegal for not following the Omnibus Election Code. But now, both are COMELEC commissioner. They see nothing wrong with the telco exchange in the 2022 election, which Chairman George Garcia said is the correct term for the Meet Me room and queue server in the 2019 election. Now, how could a device be described as illegal by the same persons in 2019 and find nothing unlawful about it in 2022? This is the video clip of that September 14, 2023 Senate hearing on the budget of
that IP address was
COMELEC.
determined by the manufacturer
Let's
of the
listen to
modem.
it.
Yes, yes, that's by the telecommunications.
Parang that's by the telco.
By the telco.
telcos.
Okay. Kaya nga, so balik ako sa first question ko. By coincidence, all three telcos assigned 20,000 machines the same IP address, private IP address, although there are 17 million available private IP addresses possible.
The 20,300 was provided by one telco company because that telco company was the one in charge of that particular area, NCR and the other nearby provinces. So it was provided for by that particular company, and yun din po yung nabigay niya na IP address.
Pala, one. Okay, may sagot. One. What telco company yan?
Globe.
One. Okay, one IP address ng telco. And then, so now, nung pinasa na ni telco exchange sa servers yung receive results niya, which IP address will reflect sa server if you look at the server? Isn't it the telco exchange's private IP address? May sarili niya private IP address yun, di ba? Kasi
the IP address already of the SIM. And then such other features such as the precinct number as well as the city and municipality.
Hindi kasi yung raw files yata nang galing sa ating transparency server eh. Yun yung doon nila na trace back. Doon nila na trace back si one private IP address. And since no touch si vote counting machine sa transparency server, hindi siya dumiretso doon eh. Si Telco Exchange ang dumiretso. So that recurring private IP address must have been the Telco Exchange's private IP address. Tama ba, Commissioner?
That's correct, Mr. Senator, because that's part of the NAT, your Network Access Translation. So, that is being assigned by the telcos.
There are many false statements made by COMELEC in the Senate hearing, as shown in that short video clip. False statement number 1. COMELEC said that the single IP address 192.168.0.2 was determined by just one telco, and it was Globe. In the transmission logs of telcos uploaded in COMELEC's own website, Globe never used 192.168.0.2. SMART also never used 192.168.0.2. Why were these two telcos the only ones included in the website? Why is COMELEC using Globe to hide who actually used that single IP address? In transmitting the election returns from 20,300 precincts? False statement number 2. Chairman George Garcia said that one telco was in charge of the National Capital Region and nearby provinces, and that this telco gave that single IP address. But all VCM modems were provided with the SIMs of the three telcos so that the teacher members of the precinct's electoral board can choose the telco in their locality that would ensure the transmission of the precinct's election returns. This is the same reason why we carry more than one SIM, to be sure that we always get a signal wherever we are located. So how could 99% of all precincts in the National Capital Region, the highest voters population in all regions in the Philippines, use just one telco to transmit their ERs? And if what Garza said, that a telco was already assigned to NCR, why was there 1% still given to other telcos? Or if the province of Cavite was assigned the same telco as in the NCR, why 95% of all precincts use 192.168.0.2 and 5% of the remaining VCM use the IP address of other telcos? False statement number 3. Garcia also said that the single IP address came from the SIM of the telco. The SIM of the telco is what gives each individual subscribers their unique identification, like the cell phone number, but a SIM is never assigned a private IP address, much less 20,300 SIMs of one telco having exactly the same IP address. Take note that before, the same Chairman Garcia said that the IP address 192.168.0.2 was already in the 20,300 new modems when Comelec bought them. But now he is saying that it is in the SIM of the telco. Both statements are false. False statement number 4. Comelec, from Commissioner Nelson Celis, who is an IT expert, said that the IP address 192.168.0.2 came from a network access transmission. What is that? There is no such thing in IP networks and just an invention of Comelec. But if he meant network address translation, NAT, then his statement is false. A NAT is a way to map multiple private addresses inside a local network to a public IP address before transferring the information onto the internet. Since Comelec already said the network used in the 2022 election was a large private network that never used the internet, nor a public IP address because they said it's dangerous, why would that network use a NAT? On the issue of the private IP address 192.168.0.2, Comelec said that it was used by 20,300 VCM new modems and was provided by just one telco. They did not mention the name of the telco or how it was able to get the transmission services for 20,300 VCM new modems, which by law must be only through a fair and competitive means favorable to the government. Comelec also informed the Senate that it has uploaded the telco logs in their website last September 8, 2023. However, only Globe and Smart were included. On October 12, 2021, Comelec and SMARTMAGIC signed a contract for procurement of secure electronic transmission services for the 2022 national and local election results. The cost was 1.053 billion pesos, which SMARTMAGIC won in a negotiated contract. The contract covers transmission from VCMs to the servers, from the Municipal Board of Canvasser servers to the Provincial District Board of Canvasser servers up to the National Board of Canvasser server. The first VCM will transmit its election results simultaneously directly to the central server, transparency server, and directly to the municipal server. Then the second VCM likewise will transmit directly to the central server, to the transparent server, and to the municipal server. It is required by law that the ladderized transmission of votes via different canvassing levels must be done in the official count of the election. The municipal server will send its certificate of canvass to the higher level, which is the provincial, and then to the central server. Notice that in all this transmission, there is no device between the sending device and the receiving devices. And it is important that in the ladderized method of transmission, it goes directly to the higher level and is not sent to a device that sends it back and forth to the different levels. That is illegal. There were other false statements made in that Senate hearing of September 14, 2023, outside of the video that was shown. False statement number 1, VCM transmitted their election returns only once to the telco exchange. But here, we have a transmission report from a precinct that is date time stamp May 9, 2022. It is clearly shown here that this VCM transmitted to 3 servers, the municipal server, central server, and transparent server. There is nothing here in this report of any transmission made to a telco exchange. It just mysteriously appeared in the Senate hearing like magic. False statement number 2. Stakeholders knew about the telco exchange before the election. The end-to-end transmission path shown to the stakeholders and the public on March 2022 does not show the VCM transmitting to any telco exchange. All VCM transmitted directly to the municipal server, the central server, and the transparency server. Shown here is the start entry of Globe's logs for May 9, 2022. This transmission came from the VCM as indicated in the APN column. What is irregular here is that the time column all have 0 seconds, when the time in the reception log of the transparent server are exact to the 60th second. Example, 19:08:50 second. Another is that from the logs, Globe started at 1:21 p.m. when voting officially closed at 7 p.m. Globe sent all ERs to a server with IP address 10.101.1.251. So Globe has little contribution to the unbelievable record 39,512 VCM transmission done in the first hour, as reflected at 8:02 p.m. in the transparency server. These are the logs from SMART. They are actually reception logs of the Abukay Bataan Municipal Server with private IP address 10.230.36.210. But what is highly irregular here is the date time started at midnight of May 8, a day before election opened. Again, SMART is not the telco that use IP address 192.168.0.2. COMELEC is deceiving the public by uploading in its website questionable telco logs. Why show only transmission from two telcos, Globe and PLDT Smart? Why were files modified, as shown here, on May 30, 2022, when the original should have been created from May 9 to May 15 of 2022? And why were there no transmission at all coming from IP address 192.168.0.2? Paragraph 5.14 of the SETS contract signed on October 12, 2021 state that the provider, SMARTMAGIC, must turn over to COMELEC all logs in the telco servers related to the 2022 election that were used during transmission. Therefore, the transmission logs of the telco should have been already uploaded in the COMELEC website, all three of these telcos. It is important for the voting public to know what telco or ISP provided the 20,300 VCM with IP address 192.168.0.2, because whoever that is was responsible in transmitting election results from these vote-rich areas in the National Capital Region. For example, 99% of all precincts in the NCR use this IP address 192.168.0.2. In the province of Cavite, 95% of all precincts in that province use the same IP address. And in the province of Batangas, all 2,316 of this VCM use IP address 192.168.0.2. And it must be emphasized here again that this IP address transmitted its election results in the first hour after voting closed. Comparing the date-time stamps of these sample election returns with that as received by the transparent server would show that there exist pre-programmed VCMs that generated fabricated election results. Coincidentally, these VCMs have modems with IP address 192.168.0.2. Take, for example, this VCM at Barangay Bambang, Batangas City with precinct ID 100-715. The election return was printed at 21:10:16 of May 9, 2022. But while it is being printed, it was already received in the transparent server at 19:25:01 or 1 hour 45 minutes 15 seconds before the ER was transmitted by a telco. And Here are other examples of that. This VCM in Barangay Cumillas South, Cervantes, Ilocos Sur, with precinct ID 290-800-09, printed its election return at 07:05:45 of May 10, 2022. Again, the transparent server received this ER at 02:30:01 of May 10, 2022, or 4 hours, 35 minutes, 44 seconds before the ER was transmitted by a telco or ISP. Many more questions were raised than answered in the Senate hearing on the COMELEC's budget. 1. Why was the telco exchange only known now after the extensive use of IP address 192.168.0.2 was exposed by the TN Trio a year after 2022 election? 2. Who provided that IP address? 3. Why was the use of the network address translation, or NAT, being used by PPCRB as an explanation on the use of private IP addresses when COMELEC said in the hearing that no public IP address were used? A NAT can only exist if public IP addresses are involved, for it translates a public IP address to several private IP addresses and vice versa. And 4. Why are the telco logs shown in the COMELEC website only for Globe and Smart? And why were these logs so skimpy? And what was shown were seemingly modified? Here is the statement from NAMFREL, which we quote. NAMFREL believes that the issues raised are rooted on the non-transparent automated election system and the lack of transparency in its implementation. In the spirit of COMELEC Chairman George Garcia's pronouncement of full transparency, NAMFREL calls on the COMELEC to make publicly available the transmission log of the 3 telecommunication service providers, as well as other automated election system generated election data. End of quote. In conclusion, the 2022 election started with an unbelievable first-hour VCM transmission of 39,512 election returns, a record in our entire electoral history, if not the whole world. That first-hour count was followed by an uncanny constant vote ratio for all presidential and vice presidential candidates, again a phenomenon never seen before. Then came the admission of COMELEC that there were at least 20,300 VCM modems having the same private IP address 192.168.0.2, and this IP address was extensively used in that first hour. For all intents and purposes, the winners for president and vice president was determined in that first hour alone. COMELEC and its apologists tried to explain that the record first hour VCM transmission was possible, but could not explain the drastic drop of VCM transmission in the second hour, almost half of the first hour. They said that the constant vote ratio was due to the law of large numbers, But the basis of that large number was the first hour count that was padded by ERs coming from a suspicious single IP address. Until now, COMELEC can't clearly explain how it was possible for a private network to have 20,300 devices with IP address 192.168.0.2 to have mostly sender ERs in the first hour from vote-rich areas. COMELEC even lied that Globe was the source of this IP address. With these statistically highly improbable, if not impossible events, being explained by COMELEC and its apologists with false statements, extraordinary theories, and suspicious systems that are not only violating technical protocols, but also legal requirements, we are claiming, supported by evidences coming from COMELEC itself, that the 2022 election was fraudulent. The only way that COMELEC can counter our claim is to show the actual transmission logs of all telcos or ISPs that were used during the 2022 election, as also demanded by NAMFREL. What it has shown so far are limited edited data of Globe and Smart.